Welcome. I spent decades as a city detective, where every case had a logical solution. My world was built on cold, hard facts, not ghosts or curses. Now retired, I am taking on a new kind of case. The ones people blame on the paranormal. They see phantoms, but I look for facts, because where others see the supernatural, I always find a truth far more chilling. This particular case began when the call came from a regional sheriff in a remote, rural county. A man whose voice was thick with bewilderment and a healthy dose of fear. "Detective," he began, "we've got a lake, a very old lake, and it is doing something impossible. It is draining itself, and people are dying." The lake in question was the centerpiece of a small, isolated town, a shimmering, pristine body of water that was the source of their drinking water, their livelihood, and their identity. Local legend was an old one, a tale of a mythic water creature, a lake serpent that would occasionally grow restless and demand a tribute. It was said that the serpent had the power to swallow the lake's water, only to return it once its hunger was sated. It was a local myth, a quaint story for tourists, but recently the myth had taken a terrifying turn. The lake was no longer a myth. The water was, in fact, disappearing. The town's residents, their nerves frayed, described a terrifying phenomenon. They would wake up in the morning to find the lake's water level had dropped by dozens of feet, exposing a vast, muddy shoreline and the skeletal remains of old boats. It was as if the lake had been unplugged. Then, just as mysteriously, it would refill over the course of a single day, returning to its normal level, leaving behind a layer of mud and a community in shock. This terror turned into a full-blown panic when people started to disappear. Two local fishermen, a town historian who was obsessed with the lake's myths, and a young couple who had been camping near the shore, were all found dead in the woods. Their bodies were discovered far from the lake, with no signs of violence. The medical examiner could only say that the deaths were a result of a massive, sudden shock to the system, and the locals, with fear now a living, breathing thing in their hearts, knew exactly who to blame: the lake serpent, the ancient creature punishing them for seeing its work. I drove out there, leaving the logical order of the city for a place steeped in irrational fear, where the lines between folklore and murder had been drawn in blood. The air was thick with desperation and the scent of damp earth. I listened to the sheriff's account, to the terrified, whispered anecdotes of the locals. I heard their stories of the lake serpent, but I wasn't looking for a water creature. I was looking for a pattern and a motive, because a lake serpent doesn't commit murder. My investigation began not with the lake's myth, but with the specific details of the disappearances. I noticed something curious in the witnesses' accounts. The water's disappearance was never random. It only appeared on nights of heavy rain, and it always seemed to have a subtle but distinct, deliberate rhythm. The draining of the lake happened over the course of a single night, and the refilling happened over the course of a single day. This was not the work of a natural phenomenon. This was the work of a controlled, man-made system. I also learned that the victims were not random. They were all people who had, at one point, been involved with the lake's history, its myths, or its specific geological makeup. This was not a spirit of vengeance. This was an act of calculated greed. I then turned my attention to the lake's geology. I noticed something that the locals had missed. On the lake's shore, there was a specific rock formation that was, according to local legend, the portal where the lake serpent would return the water. But as I swept a small, high-powered magnet over the ground, it picked up something tiny, almost invisible. Fragmented pieces of metal buried just beneath the surface of the soil. They were from a rare, high-tech alloy. This was not the work of a demon. This was a human with tools. I brought in a team of specialists from the mainland, geologists, engineers, and experts in water technology. We set up an observation post on a nearby headland, waiting for the rain to roll in. When it did, as if on cue, the lake's water level began to drop, slowly but surely, over the course of a single night. But as my team used specialized instruments to analyze the phenomenon, the truth began to emerge. The water wasn't disappearing, it was being stolen. Here's how it went down, plain as day. A criminal cartel with ties to a powerful, unscrupulous agricultural company had identified the lake as a perfect staging ground for their illicit operations. The local legend of the lake serpent provided a perfect piece of local lore to exploit, and the rural location provided a natural curtain for their crimes. The motive wasn't mythical vengeance, it was the immensely profitable illegal trade of water. They were using the terror of the lake serpent to keep prying eyes away, while they committed their crimes in plain sight. The murderers had spent months, maybe even years, meticulously crafting their deception. They weren't using a simple pump, they were using a powerful, hidden network of underground pumps and tunnels, built over a period of years, to steal the lake's water. This technology, wirelessly controlled, allowed them to drain the lake's water at a specific, controlled rate and to return it at a specific, controlled rate, creating the illusion of a mythical creature. The disappearing of the water was a calculated, brutal act of theft, and the murders were a series of cold, calculated cleanups. The victims weren't killed by a lake serpent, they were murdered by the looters. As soon as a victim discovered the network of tunnels, they would be swiftly eliminated. They would then use the legend of the lake serpent to explain the deaths, knowing the superstitious locals would never look for a human culprit. The murder of the victims was a chillingly practical solution to a potential problem. The witnesses, my team and I, with the help of the local police, used our own boats to confront the smugglers. We found them hiding out in a secluded cove, their submersible projector system and their stash of stolen goods and cash hidden on their vessel. They confessed, their stories chillingly revealing the cold, cynical logic of their crimes. They had turned a beloved local legend into a weapon, using a ghost story as the perfect cover for a calculated, brutal series of murders and robberies. No ghost, just a group of men, consumed by greed, and a very good projector. So, there you have it. No evil spirits, no curses, just a chilling case of human vengeance. This one showed me how easily a person can turn another's belief into a weapon. They want you to blame a ghost because the truth, a man consumed by a grudge, is far more terrifying. This case proved that the most dangerous monsters aren't paranormal, but human. Stay sharp.